We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
Greetings, friends, the Drew Allen audience, enemies, liberals across this country that hate my guts. This is a big show today. The biggest one I've ever done. I don't speak in hyperbole. I am going to make my endorsement for New York City mayor in just a little bit. Usually, we get over 1,000 live views. We had 12,000 alone on Rumble just a couple days ago on the show. So I'm going to hold off on giving the announcement until just a few minutes, until we hit critical mass with the audience. Here on the views, I can see we usually get well over 1,000. So, do yourself, your friends, your families a favor. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on X, go ahead and share this episode. Share it with your friends because you don't want to miss it. I'll give you some news of the day here as I prepare to reveal my big endorsement for New York City mayor after watching the final debate last night with Mom Donnie, the immigrant, versus Andrew Cuomo, the disgraced former governor of New York State, and Curtis Sliwa, the Republican candidate. Democrats are always telling us that things don't happen, even though they happen. There's a report here that an illegal immigrant was accused of raping a 54-year-old woman in Chicago as she shrieked for help. This illegal immigrant came all the way from Nicaragua, and he raped the 54-year-old woman after he dragged her into an alley, stripped her naked, and bashed her head into the concrete, the feds said. Now, this is unfortunately just the latest example of this. This is happening all the time, but we're told this doesn't happen, of course. These illegals that come over, it's just families looking for a better life. No, it's not, unfortunately. And what do we hear from the left time and time again with gun violence? Well, if it saves one life, let's just abolish the guns. Well, it would save countless lives at this point if we close the border, which, thanks to Donald J. Trump, that is happening now. But this is another illegal that came to us courtesy of the Biden administration, the Autopin administration. Later, Arauz Medina, 21, has been in custody since he was arrested last month over the sick attack that unfolded on August 31st in the Windy City's Belmont Cragen neighborhood. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials officially lodged an arrest detainer for him on Wednesday. Chicago is a sanctuary city, of course, meaning authorities are prevented from honoring ICE requests. That's right. Chicago is fighting for the right of illegals to bash the heads in of 54-year-old American women in Chicago before raping them and killing them. That's what Chicago and Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, are fighting for. The monster was released into the country by the Biden administration. Pritzker and his sanctuary policies, of course, protect these criminal, illegal alien rapists over American citizens. This is just so sick, folks. Arauz Medina, the illegal from Nicaragua, he allegedly grabbed the woman by her hair, dragged her across the street in the early hours as she screamed. Her shrieks were so loud that they were picked up on residents' surveillance cameras. He forced her into an alley. He choked the woman, ripped off her clothes. She lost consciousness after her attacker allegedly slammed her head into the concrete. And then he fled after he got spooked by a passing motorist. The victim then ran naked down the streets until a nearby food truck vendor was able to help her. So she's alive, but traumatized, raped by an illegal, her head bashed. Now get this, Arouse Medina is believed to have entered the U.S. illegally near Eagle Pass, Texas on September 17th last year. Do you remember Eagle Pass, Texas? This was a big contentious thing for the left, for the Biden administration, because all of these illegals were pouring across the border in this particular area near Eagle Pass, Texas. And Governor Abbott of Texas, of course, put up buoys and other things in the Rio Grande to try and prevent this from happening. And, the United States Justice Department, they told Texas back then that its floating barrier on the Rio Grande violated federal law, raised humanitarian concerns. Is it not a humanitarian concern when an illegal alien comes into this country and rapes a 54-year-old American woman in Chicago? That's a humanitarian problem for me. No talk about this man's family. No talk about, this is just outrageous. But the Democrat Party is the party of criminals and rapists. The left tried to attack the press secretary, Levitt, for talking about who the Democrat Party's constituency was at this point. And it's people like this. The Democrat Party today exists to protect people like later Arouse Medina, who's an illegal alien who rapes American women in Chicago. Now, if you're just joining us, the numbers are going up. We're up to nearly 400 people across all these platforms. Go ahead and share this on your Facebook, on your X, retweet it, whatever you want to call it, because I've got my announcement coming up in just a few moments about my endorsement for the New York City mayor. You don't want to miss it, folks. Now, there's another story here that was just breaking on the New York Post for you sports aficionados out there. A bombshell illegal sports betting scheme that involved 4 NBA teams and 4 mafia crime families netted upwards of $7 million over 2 years, the FBI just announced. This is today, on Thursday. The Portland Trail Blazers head coach, Chauncey Billups, Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, and former NBA player Damon James were among those indicted in this truly stunning takedown of 2 separate illegal gambling-related cases. This is not looking good for the NBA, folks. Really bad look for the NBA. Now, LeBron James is not involved thus far in the scheme at all. I doubt he was. But get this, 31 people, which includes, mafia families, coaches and players from the Charlotte Hornets, Portland Trail Blazers, Los Angeles Lakers, and Toronto Raptors. They've been arrested in this scheme, carried out between January 2022 and March 2024. So one of the things they did, for example, so LeBron James had an injury, and so that injury status was sold by his pal and a former Los Angeles Lakers coach, Damon James, as part of a massive prop betting scheme. This is according to the court documents and law enforcement sources. Jones, who's an ex-Cleveland Cavs player and an unofficial assistant coach for the Lakers during that 2022-2023 season, well, he sent a message to one of the betting ring members on February 9th, 2023. That's a day before my birthday. Happy birthday to me. One day, again. Urging him to place a bet on Lakers' opponent, the Milwaukee Bucks, because James wasn't going to be able to play. He was out with an injury that night. This is what sources told the New York Post. Get a big bet on Milwaukee tonight before the information is out, Jones texted, according to the indictment. So anyway, wild stuff afoot. Look, I want to get into this shutdown, which is, as of a couple days ago, the second longest in U.S. history, I believe. I've got some audio I want to play of the House Democrat whip, that'd be the second in command there, who explains exactly why the Democrats are doing this. And it has nothing to do with helping the American people. They actually celebrate the pain they're causing because that, they say, is the only leverage they have. And I will expound upon that in a little bit after I give my endorsement for a New York City mayor in just a few moments here. But that really is, and this is what I'll get into in a little bit, that really is the platform of the Democrat Party. All of their policies and welfare initiatives and everything else, they're all designed to inflict pain upon the American people. They want dependency on them so that you are their slave and so they can come along and threaten to take it away. That's not good dealing. That's completely amoral. And that is the intention. But a lot of people, there are a lot of Democrats out there that still believe that the Democrat Party has good intentions despite all of their efforts failing time and time again. It's the same thing with some people's view of Zoran Mamdani, I suppose. He has good intentions. You know, Lenin and Stalin had great intentions. Hitler had great intentions, didn't he? Just didn't execute, the communism or the socialism or the authoritarianism right in the right manner. But here in the USA, we're a brain trust, baby. We will perfect communism. So anyway, it's really, really astounding. So, all right, I'm getting ready to make my announcement. This is kind of the last call to go and share this episode across the platforms because this is a banger, as the young folks would say in just a moment. But first, microplastics are infiltrating every part of our lives. Scientists estimate we now consume a credit card's worth of plastic every single week through our food, our water, even the air we breathe. One study found plastic particles in 100% of human lung samples. Think about that. That's crazy. Nobody's safe from exposure. And it gets worse. These plastics don't just sit in your body. They cross the gut lining, leach into your blood. They disrupt everything. They've been shown to alter gut bacteria, suppress your immune response, and increase your risk for neurodegenerative disease, metabolic disorders, and even cancer. Some plastic toxins like BPA and phthalates mimic hormones, interfere with fertility, and they damage DNA even. And even if you can, by the way, eat clean or avoid packaged foods, you're still being exposed. You can't opt out of the microplastics. But your gut can help you fight back. Kimchi One from Bright Core Nutrition. This is a potent ally in this toxic world. It's packed with over 900 probiotic strains. Probiotics are not new to you. You should know about probiotics at this point. But this is unique to kimchi and proven to break down BPA. It helps you detox from the inside out. It doesn't just support digestion. It helps protect your cells. It helps your brain. It helps your hormones. It helps your future. Your body wasn't designed to handle plastic, but your gut was designed to protect you. You just have to give it the right tools. And right now you can get 25% off with code WOLF, as in Dr. Naomi Wolf, at mybrightcore.com/wolf. Or for an even better deal, you can call our friends at Brightcore and get up to 50% off and free shipping. The number is 888-575-4996. You'll see that at the bottom of this episode on Rumble for reference, but it's 888-575-4996. And Kimchi One from Brightcore. Health starts in the gut. Get 25% off. Again, you can use code WOLF at mybrightcore.com/wolf, or call and get 50% off plus free shipping, folks. All right. So if you're just joining me today, some of you may be new. I don't usually talk about my bona fides, but I think it's important to announce my bona fides since I'm going to make an endorsement for New York City mayor. Why should you care about Drew Allen's endorsement for mayor of New York City? Well, I'm not just a podcaster. Yes, I'm an author. Yes, I'm a widely published columnist. This is my, I don't do this often, but this is my 60 seconds of patting myself on the back, I suppose, as humbly as I can, just like Zoran Mamdani, such a humble guy. But, I'm a publicist, and that's what I've done for a number of years. Charlie Kirk was my client last year for his book, Right Wing Revolution. I did publicity for that. Full disclosure, Dr. Naomi Wolf has been my client in the past. Peter Navarro, a client. Dr. Ben Carson. It's a long list of people. It includes, conservatives mainly across the board. Alan Dershowitz has been a client in the past. I can't even think of how many right now. It's like, I start to think about the client list, and I'm amazed at how many people I've worked with. It really is stunning. Dr. Janine Pirro, Tulsi Gabbard has been a client as well. So I'm not just a podcaster. I'm somebody who has dealt with a lot of these people and who has championed the conservative movement. And so that's why you might be astonished by my New York City mayoral endorsement. I am a conservative's conservative, baby, a conservative warrior who has worked with some of the most prominent conservative voices in the world and in this country. So go ahead, share the episode, because the endorsement is forthcoming. So I've railed against Zohran Mamdani as recently as 2 days ago on the show. And, people on the left really gave me a lot of flack. They said I didn't understand. They made their case to me why Zohran Mamdani should be the mayor of New York City. I talked about his inexperience, his radicalism aside. I talked about his inexperience, how that disqualified him from running the biggest city in America. But they pressed on with their arguments. And I've listened to those who support Zohran Mamdani. I have listened to the brilliant leftists around this country. And I have decided to endorse Zohran Mamdani because it is time. It is time that we had a regular guy running New York City, a real man of the people, a real down-to-earth working class hero. We need a guy in office, mayor of New York City, who understands what it is like to struggle from the backseat of a chauffeured car. Zohran Mamdani, he is an immigrant's immigrant. His life story just really represents America. The Statue of Liberty that has that plaque that was put on it after the fact by a poet that had nothing to do with the actual meaning of the Statue of Liberty, but it was added later, and that's what the leftists always talk about all the time. Give us your poor. Give us Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani, of course, was born in Uganda to a famous filmmaker mother and a globally celebrated writer and Columbia University professor father. Zohran's life, an immigrant's immigrant. Well, his life has been one long lesson in hardship. He has lived through things that most of us cannot even imagine. Like this guy has had to choose between a vacation home, a summer house in Goa, or the apartment in New York that his parents own. This guy has had to make hard decisions like attending a premiere of his mother's films at Sundance, or having to go to the lecture hall to listen to his father speak at Columbia University. This guy, Zohran Mamdani, he grew up just like you and me, just like all the immigrants in New York, just like even the illegals coming across the border, don't you know? This is who Zohran Mamdani is, just one of the people, one of the immigrants, as I call him. He's just like you. He had a private tutor named Dinesh Masood Alavi as a kid, a career United Nations peace builder. This is the people's experience, private tutor. But let us not forget Zohran Mamdani's truly humble beginnings here in America. When he came at just the age of 7 years old, this guy, Zohran Mamdani, he was forced, think about it, he was forced to attend the Bank Street School for Children. This is a private K-8 school in Manhattan that costs more than $66,000 per year. And then, of course, he moved on to the prestigious Bronx High School of Science, one of the city's most elite specialized public schools. This is one of the people. This is a working class story. Totally classic. And then there's college. Zohran Mamdani went to Bowdoin College. This is the kind of place, where you don't have cafeterias. You have, artisan dining experiences, where activism means demanding gender-neutral napkins while writing essays on why your trust fund is a form of reparations. It's a place where diversity means having both almond and oat milk options. I mean, who among us, who of you in New York City, you immigrant families out there, you immigrants, you voters, who among us hasn't had to struggle through a $60,000 a year liberal arts college to get a degree in Africana studies? We've all been there, just like Zohran Mamdani. He's one of us. Then, of course, after a lifetime of personal sacrifice and adversity, Zohran Mamdani did every self-made man does. He goes straight into politics. No business experience, No private sector job, no real world success, just pure ideological conviction, pure socialism, pure communism, because he had a dream to tell hardworking people how to live their lives. He's just like me, except for the part where his family was featured in, the New Yorker more times than I've been featured on my own podcast. But other than that, yeah, he's totally relatable. And let's not forget how Zoran Mamdani fights for the working class. From his rent-controlled apartment in Astoria, where he pays just $2,300 a month on a $143,000 salary, taxpayer-funded salary. And of course, he gave himself a raise as an assemblyman to get that $143,000. So think about that. I mean, nothing says man of the people more than, pocketing six figures while complaining about capitalism between your yoga classes. Zoran Mamdani is a guy that he rails against capitalism with a kind of passion that only a man with a trust fund can afford. It is so inspiring, truly. You can't even buy that kind of authenticity. Unless, of course, your parents already bought it. Zoran Mamdani, he is living proof that you too can grow up surrounded by money and influence and literary connections and Hollywood connections, and you can still claim to be oppressed. That is the American dream. That is Zoran Mamdani's dream. That is the democratic socialist dream. Because after growing up in immense wealth, privilege, and comfort, Zoran somehow looked around and he thought, you know who the real enemy is? It's the small business owner who still uses gas stoves. He's never built anything. He's never run anything. He's never achieved anything. But do not worry, New Yorkers. He's absolutely certain he knows how to run the economy and tell you how to run your own life, because he is just like you. And if there's one thing rich kids with no experience in trust funds are known for, it is humility. Zoran Mamdani might be the only socialist I know who's never had to share anything. The man is so disconnected from reality, he probably thinks working class means people who work on his class schedule in college. And yet, Zoran Mamdani perseveres. He continues to fight for the people. From his rent-controlled apartment, his parents probably Venmo him for. From his platform as the voice of the oppressed. As long as oppressed means, comfortable, angry, and terminally online. He rails against capitalism while tweeting from an iPhone assembled by child labor. Such important stuff. He demands equality from a position of inherited privilege. He is the Che Guevara of Park Slope, folks. Zoran Mamdani. So yes, I am supporting Zoran Mamdani because it is time we stopped electing competent people who've actually done things and started electing people who talk about doing things while blaming capitalism for why they haven't. Zoran Mamdani, folks. He's proof that you can be rich, entitled, unaccomplished, and still brand yourself a revolutionary, a man of the people, just not maybe these people, maybe the kind of people that have homes with names and whose revolutions come with catering, but that is Zoran Mamdani. I finally understand why the left supports him. And I endorse Zoran Mamdani. Thank you for your attention to this matter. How's that? Is that inspiring? Does that encourage everyone to go out and vote for Zoran Mamdani? I hope so. I hope so. A real warrior for the people, Zoran Mamdani. Immigrants. Now, I do have some clips here that I want to play for you from the debates last night. You won't hear me speak favorably of Andrew Cuomo very often. I'll tell you that right now. But given Zoran Mamdani, maybe you should. Well, I guess I have no choice. You know, let's just start with this one. This is Andrew Cuomo just totally eviscerating Zoran Mamdani.
Then you take a picture with Rebecca Kadaga, Deputy Prime Minister of Uganda. You take a picture with your father. You're smiling. He's smiling. She's known as Rebecca Gay Killer Kadaga. You're a citizen of Uganda. You took the picture. You said you didn't know who she was. It turns out you did. How do you not renounce your citizenship or demand BDS against Uganda for imprisoning people who are gay just by their sexual orientation? Isn't that a basic violation of human rights?
I think he gets the question.
Well, that's another reason I support Zoran Mamdani right there. He's a Muslim who pals around with people who are anti-gay, whose ideology calls for them to be killed because they're gay, and at the same time runs as the Democrat in New York City. But, you know, who cares if he's anti-gay? You know, he's a Democrat, so you vote for him anyway. It's amazing how this stuff works. Here's another clip.
What my opponents are clinging to is the past, because that's all that they know. What I am proposing is something that will address the needs of New Yorkers in the present. We speak and hear from New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs who outline how the mental health crisis is one of the major challenges in this city. And yet what we have in our city is asking those same police officers who are being asked to respond to shootings, respond to murders, to also respond to these calls. I trust the dispatchers who would be receiving these calls to make the determination as to whether there was any indication of violence. If there is no indication of a threat of violence, then we would set the mental health experts and providers to respond to those same incidents. The reason I believe in...
So, you know, this is so indicative of the left's policies. This is not a novel idea. This is a defund the police idea, by the way. But this idea that you replace police with, you know, shrinks. And this has been tried before in other places, and it's failed spectacularly. Now, think about this. So this genius idea from Zoran Mamdani, the people's warrior, the working class hero. So he wants to replace cops with mental health professionals. Because apparently when someone is waving a knife in the street or at a house and they have a mental health problem that's contributing to it, what we really need is a social worker with a clipboard to respond to the incident, not a cop. I, of course, support mental health care, but I also support a person's right to stay alive and be defended. And so when you send unarmed counselors into unpredictable, often violent situations, you're not being compassionate. You're actually being reckless, and you're going to get somebody killed. It's just astonishing. And think about, you know, so many of these incidents that are so volatile like this, especially when it involves mental illness. He's suggesting that the person that picks up the phone when you call for help, they're going to make the determination. I mean, think about it. You're in a home with a mentally ill person, and it could turn volatile and violent at any moment, and you make the call to report there's a problem at your house and you need help. And that person on the other end of the phone is supposed to make the determination whether a cop needs to show up or a, you know, social worker with a clipboard. So if it turns violent, you've got a social worker with a clipboard, you're screwed. You're host. They can't help you. So it makes zero sense whatsoever to do that, because you're increasing the possibility that it turns violent and somebody gets hurt. It's so astonishing to me. I mean, you have to have rot of the brain to even propose something so stupid. And every cop in America knows that mental health calls can turn deadly in seconds. That's why police are, by the way, already trained in crisis intervention and de-escalation. But, you know, Zoran Mamdani wants to experiment with people's lives. It's just, man. I mean, so Eugene, Oregon tried this. It was called the Cahoots program. It was canceled relatively recently. And it sent social workers to certain calls. And of course, it works sometimes when that incident isn't going to turn volatile and violence. But obviously, it's an abject failure when it doesn't. So again, you're playing with people's lives here. You know, so you know, if and you're not in control of what's going to happen in the future in that situation, by the way. You know, a mentally ill person could grab a knife or grab a gun, or it could turn into a murder or an attack any moment. And you can't predict where it's going to go. It's a volatile situation. And so rather than sending a cop who can actually do something and intervene and save someone's life and restrain someone, you're going to just throw the dice and hope that it doesn't turn volatile and send some social worker in there with a clipboard. They can't do anything. That doesn't even have police training. So it's stupid. Of course the police should be sent there. But, you know, I think Denver and Portland and all these failed cities, San Francisco, they've all tried the same experiment. And, you know, like I said, most police officers are already trained in crisis intervention. They take these specialized courses, CIT courses, that teach them how to calm people, to de-escalate, to recognize signs of mental illness. But, you know, this doesn't fit the narrative of the left, which was, you know, cops are bad. Cops are the problem. Cops are the danger. Oh, you know, it's just so. I mean, and also, what's the point? So human nature is the problem. So you got cops who are bad, but there's no social workers who are bad. I mean, how does that even work? So this is defunding the police through the back door. That's what this is. It's defunding the police without calling it defunding the police, because what you're doing is you're removing police and replacing them with social workers with clipboards. So, you know, it's dismantling law enforcement one department at a time, and they can call it whatever they want. This isn't compassion. You know, this is suicide. So anyway, I mean, so that's his genius idea. That is, you know, Zoran Mamdani. So if you want the people of New York to be less safe and less protected, then Zoran Mamdani is absolutely your guy. Here's another clip, Andrew Cuomo.
I understand my friend doesn't really understand government. The governor doesn't build housing in New York City.
Not if it's you.
No, legally, there are jurisdictions. The governor doesn't pick up trash. He doesn't run the fire department. That's what the mayor does. The mayor builds housing. The state allocates funding for localities. And I allocated more funding for housing than any governor in the history of the state of New York. All right? I did things. You have never had a job. You've never accomplished anything. There's no reason to believe you have any merit or qualification for 8.5 million lives. You don't know how to run a government. You don't know how to handle an emergency. And you've literally never proposed a bill on anything that you're not talking about in your campaign. You had the worst attendance record in the assembly, and you gave yourselves the highest raise in the United States of America. You went from $110,000 to $140,000, and then you never showed up for work, and you missed 80% of the votes. Shame on you. Shame on you.
I mean, that is a brutal takedown that is completely honest of Zoran Mamdani. Now, I've heard the left-wing kooks, some of them on my own Facebook, come out and try and say, you know, well, Donald Trump didn't have political experience. We're talking about life experience doing anything. Zoran Mamdani is a radical ideologue that has the stupidest ideas ever that we know are going to get people killed and harmed, such as replacing police with social workers with clipboards. But, oh, yeah, you know, I mean, this is like everything is TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. You know, Zoran Mamdani apparently is like the you know, rebellion vote against Trump. So you'll burn New York City to the ground. It's just crazy the way these people think. But, you know, you heard something there about Zoran Mamdani's attendance. I mean, this is also a lazy individual. It comes from him being privileged and never having to work for anything in his life. He's had a silver spoon in his mouth since he was born. So he announced his candidacy for New York City mayor in October 2024. He won the primary on June 24th, 2025. But even before he won the Democrat nomination to be the mayoral candidate for the Democrat Party in New York City, just this year in 2025, he was absent for 50% of the assembly votes. That was by June. This is before he won the nomination. He couldn't show up to work. And what's amazing about that is in New York City, they have not changed in the assembly the alteration they made from the COVID era, which was to allow people to vote remotely. So Zoran Memdani took his job so unseriously as an assemblyman, as a government guy, as one of the people, that he couldn't even remotely vote in the assembly. 50% he missed, the lowest attendance record. So this guy can't walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, apparently. He's too focused on being mayor. So all these people that tell me, look at all his government experience. Government experience? He was elected assemblyman and then never showed up to work. Obviously, at this point, I think you understand that my endorsement was satire. I got another clip to play in a minute because Zoran Memdani was just sweating bullets at this thing. But first, what if the next big crash is already in motion and almost no one sees it coming? Every major economic collapse since 1929 was preceded by the same 7 warning signals, and right now all 7 are flashing red at the same time. These aren't headlines, they're deep market indicators that Wall Street prefers you never hear about. That's why our friends at American Alternative Assets created the Bellwether Signal. This is a free report, doesn't cost you anything, that reveals what these signals mean and how smart Americans are protecting their savings with gold and silver before it's too late. You can download your free copy right now at cloutgold.com, or you can call at 855-803-GOLD. Again, that is cloutgold.com. Protect your future. You can't wait for the headlines to catch up. So here's another clip of the one I was just mentioning, Zoran Memdani just trying to answer a question because his mind is not filled with anything concrete. It's just a bunch of slogans he's heard through communist literature.
First, I'll just say that one of the most celebrated leaders of the New York City Transit was Andy Byford, who had such a terrible experience working under Andrew Cuomo that he would rather work under Donald Trump right now. The proposal that we have put forward addresses the fact that today, in the wealthiest city, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, 1 in 5 New Yorkers cannot afford the bus fare. It would cost $700 million a year to make the slowest buses in the country fast and free. And by doing so, we would generate more than double in economic revenue for New Yorkers across the city. It would be something that would reduce assaults on bus drivers, it would increase ridership on those buses, and it would actually have environmental impacts as fewer New Yorkers would drive their own car or take a taxi and would instead get on the bus. And I know all of this because I delivered it as a state assembly member who won the first free buses in New York City's history.
His solution to everything is like more free stuff. I'm not sure how his proposal to like make buses free is going to solve crime problems on buses. Can someone explain that to me through Zoran Memdani's logic? But he's anti-cop. You can't have too many cops around. That's just scary. It's like having ICE around. Ooh. We don't want the criminals to feel uncomfortable. We have to bend over backwards to protect the, sensitive nature of the criminal in New York City. And of course, New York City is a mismanaged city. It's been mismanaged since Rudy Giuliani, the last great mayor of New York City. And, this TDS and this radicalism that's so poisonous and cancerous, New Yorkers all agreed that Rudy Giuliani was a great mayor. Everyone agreed. I'm 38, so I was around back then, though I was young. But before Obama and then the Trump derangement syndrome set in around 2015, 2016, these people all told me how much they loved Rudy Giuliani. New Yorkers, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, everyone. He was great. They praised him for cleaning up crime and everything else. It was a golden city at that time. And then suddenly their opinion of Rudy Giuliani, who hasn't been in office in, forever, now he was a terrible mayor. Now he was a bad mayor. Not because the facts on the ground changed, but because their brains were broken. Their brains were broken. So those are just a few clips from the debate. I mean, it's still just a stunning thing to see. I don't know what's going to happen in New York. Um, I mean, maybe they'll wake up. Maybe some of the polling's wrong, but really there aren't any good options in New York City. I mean, you've got Andrew Cuomo, and you've got Zoran Mamdani. I mean, Curtis Sliwa doesn't have a chance, just being honest. And a lot of people are still calling for him to drop out of the race to get Andrew Cuomo over Zoran Mamdani. But whether it's Andrew Cuomo or Zoran Mamdani, it's still a disaster for New York City. Andrew Cuomo was a disaster for New York as governor. And he'll be a disaster for mayor as well. He'll just be less of a disaster. But, Zoran Mamdani, has no clue, and he showed it on that stage, how the mayor even works. He doesn't even know what the mayor's powers are. He doesn't even know that the mayor doesn't have any ability to affect housing because there's a committee that deals with that. It's not the mayor's prerogative. The mayor also doesn't control purse strings, to fund a lot of these initiatives or even to raise the taxes that would be required to do it. That has to come from the governor of the state. And so, what's going to end up happening is Zoran Mamdani would be surrounded by other radical ideologues who are policymakers and do understand how it works. And he will ram through all these different initiatives, as many as he can, as long as he controls the assembly. And there'll be no stopping him. And, he's palling around with a radical jihadist, actually. And I found this picture of Zoran Mamdani. Look at this guy. The caliphate, jihadist caliphate, Zoran Mamdani. That's right. What a hero. Put that on the posters in New York City. So anyway, that's the deal with Zoran Mamdani. I want to get into some other stuff. I want to talk about this this government shutdown. Look, I have friends who work in government. Obviously, I have friends who are in the military, and they'll get back paid, but they still have bills to pay right now, and it puts them in a very stressful situation. And so I'm sympathetic to those people. At the same time, it's not worth caving to Democrat demands to appeal to, to solve those problems right away. And in fact, this government shutdown isn't a Republican shutdown. It's a Democrat shutdown. Republicans have tried to open the government back up, I think 11 times now, and the Democrats have shut it down every single time. And for the Democrats, this is about showing that it's a resistance. It's like the No Kings protest that made absolutely no sense. No kings. We don't have kings. We didn't have a king before you protested. We still don't have a king after you protested. You guys are upset you lost an election. You hate Donald Trump. We get it. It was a display of the mentally ill across this country, all showing up in force to scream at each other and reinforce each other's mental illnesses and tell them that it's okay to be a lunatic. But there's no election right now. There's nothing they can do about it except, show that they're in solidarity with, the Marxists out there. We hate Trump, so they had to go to the streets to show us that. Okay, what did you accomplish? Absolutely nothing. Zilch. And it was embarrassing for them because nobody showed up. Nobody showed up. I know that they quote 7 million people, 7 million, they said before the actual protest, and then they just kept repeating the number afterwards, even though reports revealed that it wasn't 7 million people, but whatever. So I want to play this clip because, part of my duty here is broader education. It's not just, oh, here's a story and let's move on. It's here's a story. What do we need to learn from it? Because there's lessons that are almost immutable. They never change because of the ideology of the left and this battle we're engaged in, this war we're engaged in, which has been the same battle we've been engaged in since the beginning of human time. Freedom versus tyranny. That's what it comes down to. And the left can wrap itself in whatever anti-authoritarian slogans it wants. Antifa, they're anti-fascist, and yet they are fascist themselves. So they can play the word games all day long. Murdering babies in the womb, that's healthcare. That's, pro-choice. It's actually pro-death, pro-murder. But listen to the whip, second in command, Democrat in the House, Clark. Listen to her talk about keeping the government shut down and what the motivations are.
I mean, shutdowns are terrible. And of course, there will be, families that are going to suffer. We take that responsibility very seriously. But it is one of the few leveraged times we have.
They take it very seriously in acknowledging that they know they're hurting people. But hurting people is one of the few leverages they have. You understand that? And this, by the way, is, as I alluded to in the beginning of the show, this is every Democrat Party policy. They create chaos and they intentionally hurt people and they present themselves as the unique saviors. People are hurting right now because the Democrats are keeping the government shut down. Republicans can't do it without Democrat support unless they're able to get rid of the filibuster. It takes 60 votes to overcome the filibuster. So without Democrat support, this government cannot reopen. So we know people are hurting, but this is the only leverage we have. And leverage for what? What is it they're fighting about? They claim they're fighting about this Obamacare subsidy, which is outrageous, by the way. I mean, it comes from COVID times. And it's not due to end until the end of this year. So there's still time. And it should be debated. And the healthcare issue is a very real issue for the American people, including me, including you. Democrats, Republicans, independents, all are affected by healthcare in this country. But the problem, like most of the problems in this country, is because of government involvement. It was Obamacare that destroyed the healthcare industry. It was Obamacare that was responsible for increased premiums. It's Obamacare and these continued subsidies that are responsible for making it costly and ineffective. So I've said this before. I said Republicans do have to present an alternative. They do have to go out to the American people and explain what needs to happen, and they have to just do it. I think this is the administration that can do it. But they've got to act fast, and they've got to show that they have an alternative. Because people are going to hurt if these Obamacare subsidies end, because their premiums will skyrocket. They will skyrocket. But the solution isn't more Obamacare. It's to fix the system. My buddy Dallas Ludlam is in the chat here. Hey, Drew, keep up the great work. If you're not following Dallas, this is just a shout out. I appreciate him coming in. I haven't talked to Dallas in a while. That is a brilliant, I say young man. I mean, he's a little bit younger than me, but check him out on X. He's got a Substack he maintains. He writes very well, very succinctly. Honestly, you could go to Dallas's Substack for all the news you need, honestly, because he's on fire. I mean, I subscribe and I get the updates and stuff from him. So anyway, I appreciate you, Dallas. Also, what a great name. So I want to explain this. A group of House Republicans, now they're calling on Speaker Mike Johnson to deal with expiring Obamacare subsidies immediately after the government shutdown ends, right? So they're saying, look, you Democrats are saying we have to keep the government shut down because in this continuing resolution, by the way, a clean resolution, which you guys have supported a dozen times over the past, X number of years, including under Joe Biden, of course. Well, just pass this clean resolution, open up the government, and then we can have a conversation about the Obamacare subsidies. That should be separate from this. But the Democrats are holding the country hostage because they fear this Trump administration's desire and ability to fix the healthcare system, to make it better for you. The Democrats don't want anything to actually get better for you. They make it worse so that they can then falsely present an option to you, which leads to tyranny and less individuality, less autonomy. You have to understand this about the Democrat Party. You'll understand everything about them, everything they do. And this is in Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. You create a problem, and then you present yourself and your option, your solution as the only solution that can fix it. And then when you pass that solution, it gets worse. And then you project and blame your enemies, your political opponents, etc. And so you basically are slowly destroying the country while blaming the other person for the things you've done. That's how sick the left is. So 13 House GOP lawmakers led by Reps Jeff Van Drew, Republican out of New Jersey, Jen Kiggins, Virginia, Republican. They're sending a letter to Johnson, thanking him for his leadership, but maintaining that Obamacare must also be dealt with before the end of the year. So, you know, these 13 Republicans who signed the letter, they say, millions of Americans are facing drastic premium increases due to short-sighted Democratic policymaking. While we did not create this crisis, we now have both the responsibility and the opportunity to address it. Allowing these tax credits to lapse without a clear path forward would risk real harm to those we represent. So I don't have a problem with this as long as these Republicans actually have the appropriate solution in hand, that it's not kowtowing and bending the knee to the Democrats and just going along with the status quo. We've got to fix healthcare in this country. It's just, it's a disaster. All of our tax money, all of our federal funds, most of it's tied up in healthcare and welfare, obviously. These programs have to be destroyed, ripped out by the root, and replaced. And the free market is going to be the solution. And the thing is, if the Republicans can have the backbone and the stomach to actually do it and make sure it happens, there will be no going back to these welfare, inferior Obamacare solutions presented by the left, because the American people will realize how much better their lives are with our ideas and policies in effect as opposed to the Democrats. But if you never implement these policies that we talk about, that we know will help people, well, the Democrats can continue to falsely claim that, their policies, you can't survive without their policies because you haven't shown them that you can improve it. Oh, man. Okay, I got to talk about something. I can't believe it slipped my mind. I don't have the story in front of me. I'm just going to kind of riff about it. I encourage you to go and read about this. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, he has moved to effectively get rid of the childhood vaccine mandates. So Governor DeSantis has some cojones. And if you live in Florida, God bless you. I live in California. It's the exact opposite. You can't get an exemption for anything out here. And doctors who try to give exemptions will find themselves audited, even if they're legitimate under California law. The only exemption California laws now is medical. But they only allot you between 2 and 4 exemptions over the course of your entire practicing career. Think about that. And if you give just one medical exemption, the California government will then audit your practice for the rest of your career, looking to screw you. So DeSantis is doing something remarkable. He's truly, the free state of Florida is living up to its name. He's going to get rid of the childhood vaccine schedule. And of course, the doctors are apoplectic out there because why? They're going to lose their revenue stream. It's 100% factual that pediatricians, their money comes from these vaccines and giving and administering these vaccines. They do get bonuses. They get paid. Their whole practice is about the vaccine schedule. That's pretty much all these pediatricians do. This is how they depend upon their money. And in a state like California, if you refuse to get the vaccines, the pediatrician will tell you that you can no longer be a patient of theirs. Now, think about this. You go into an ER room as an illegal in this country, and the doctor is forced to take care of you. And I don't oppose that. I think if you have an emergency, you can deal with the repercussions of finance and all that stuff later. But I think people would agree that, people in a life-threatening situation, they need to be taken care of and healed and saved. I 100% agree with that. So apply that to pediatricians, though. If you disagree with the vaccines, if you don't want to get your vaccine, your kid vaccinated with Hep B, sexually transmitted disease, blood transmitted disease that's never going to affect them, you want to space out these vaccines or not get all of them, the pediatrician in a state like California will say, well, I can no longer take you anymore. What kind of doctor is that? I'm not going to take care of your kid because of our disagreement about the vaccines. Get out of my office. No health care for your child. You see how the left's logic, there is no logic. It's illogic everywhere you go. But I want to remind you something about Obamacare too, because remember, one of the things that Republicans, I think you should propose right now, while the shutdown's going on, you should propose taking a vote to making sure that members of Congress, that will be senators and House members, are subject to the same government shutdown as other government employees. That is to say, right now, if you're in the military and other areas of the government, you are not getting paid. You're not going to get paid, right? And so you hear the whip in the House, the Democrats, second in command, saying, yeah, this is the only leverage we have. But Democrats are still getting paid. They're still getting their $180,000 a year paycheck, taxpayer funded. Make that make sense. Republicans too, but members of Congress, our representatives, they always exempt themselves from the pain they inflict on the American people. And I want to point out Obamacare as an example. I went back and I was thinking about this, 2013, a little bit after Obamacare was put into effect. John Malcolm and Michael F. Cannon, they wrote an amazing piece at The Hill. Malcolm was director, might still be the director, of the Edwin Meese III Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation. He was a former deputy assistant attorney general at the Department of Justice's Criminal Division. And then Cannon was a director of health policy studies at the Cato Institute, which is a libertarian think tank. Well, Obamacare was passed, and members of Congress, congressional staff, and their dependents, they exempted themselves effectively from having to get inferior Obamacare. What they did is they established the exchange in the District of Columbia for small businesses under the Affordable Care Act. And what these guys did is they accessed a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, that showed that unnamed officials who administer benefits for Congress made false statements when they originally applied to have the House and Senate participate in DC's SHOP exchange, it was called, SHOP, for 2014. So they claim, for example, that the 435-member House had only 45 members and 45 staffers, while the 100-member Senate had only 45 employees total. The reason they did this is because the Senate and House, under these rules for small businesses, well, they're not small businesses. They don't qualify. So they violated a number of laws to exempt themselves and give themselves other health care that was better than what they forced on the American people with Obamacare, with the Affordable Care Act. So the Federal Employee Health Benefits Program, by the way, I just want you to be enraged at your representatives. Because, again, I'll say it again. You are being ruled by your inferiors. Eric Swalwell couldn't get a job in the private sector that paid him $180,000 or whatever the salary is. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her work experience fits on literally a cocktail napkin. She was a bartender. Same with Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani couldn't make $143,000 in the private sector, even in New York. What would he do for a job? Work at some nonprofit, make $60,000 a year? He's not qualified. But these people come into government, and this is the point. These people are lifelong. It is about power, but it's also about the money for these people. Yes, and there's a stock market stuff and everything else. But the point is, you have unsuccessful people that aren't smart. They couldn't succeed in the private sector, and they come in and make $180,000 a year in the Senate or whatever it is, and their eyes go wide because it's a lot of money. It's probably more than a lot of you are making. Am I right? So anyway, the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program, they give federal employees a choice of health plans, and it pays up to $12,000 of the premium. Oh, it's good to be a government employee, isn't it? But the ACA kicked members of Congress and congressional staff out of this benefits program. And the only way they could get health benefits was through an exchange. I'm talking about Obamacare and the exemptions. So those $12,000 premium contributions became illegal in the exchanges that the ACA created for individuals. So the ACA made exceptions for small businesses to get better health care. And federal laws allowed employees to contribute to premiums through SHOP exchanges. But the problem with the solution was the ACA bars businesses with more than 100 employees from participating in SHOP exchanges. DC barred, back in 2013, businesses with more than 50 employees. So when officials claimed that, you know, the Senate and the House and all that sort of stuff fit under those limits, they did so because they wanted to draw money from the Treasury, a subsidy of up to $12,000 for each member and staffer. But they made a material false claim, as you know, against the U.S. Treasury. I mean, this is a federal crime that the federal government was committing to get themselves onto this shop exchange. So if you did this as an ordinary citizen, you'd face fines of up to 3 times the amount drawn from the Treasury, so $36,000 a person, or up to 20 years in prison. So John Malcolm and Michael F. Cannon, I mean, they looked at these documents that showed that the officials knew they were violating the law. And of course, Obama knew this was happening too. So after the original false statements became public, the DC did what? They went to cover it up. They went into freakout mode. They dropped the employer-sized question from its shop exchange application, even though federal law required DC to verify that participating employers are indeed small businesses. So, this shines a light on the fact that members of Congress and their staffs still are receiving health insurance and a subsidy of up to $12,000. So, ordinary citizens don't get to go and lie to the government, but, the government and Democrats and whatever these Republicans do, they can lie. Obama administration can lie with impunity. It's just totally outrageous. Totally outrageous. All right, I want to finish up with this clip. The Bernie Sanders, who's got multiple homes, when he goes and stays in hotels, he places demands on the temperature of the room. Got to make sure the AC's on, right? Mr. Climate warrior himself. Listen to this appearance by Bernie Sanders on The View.
It's easier for the politicians in D.C. to go away from each other and say, we will win this way, while people are losing their paychecks. If Congress just said, we're not going to take our paychecks till we figure this out, that would be a noble step in the right direction, I would say.
That's not everybody can afford to do. You got some young people there with kids there.
Either can the people that aren't getting paid, though,
I think
and
that's
there's a
fair
holdout.
point. I think that's a fair point.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fair point, but, there are young people in Congress, in the House, and the Senate. They have young kids. They need a paycheck. Meanwhile, the military family doesn't need a paycheck. Those people with kids, they can, it's okay. You see their pain as leverage for you. But there you have Bernie Sanders, a man of the people, just like Zoran Mamdani. Well, yeah, these are members of Congress we're talking about, not ordinary plebeians out there. Come on. I mean, these are important people. People like me, we need our paycheck. It's okay if the American people don't get a paycheck. It's okay if, the regular government schmuck that, sacrifices and serves his country, that they don't get a paycheck. We're talking about members of Congress here. Look what we do for the country. We're so important. And this is the reason the Democrats have one foot in the grave. They're not the anti-authoritarian party. They are the pro-government party. They are the two-class system party, the ruling elite and everyone else. They view themselves as superior to you. You're superiors. You are their slaves. That's how they view things. And this is why the Democrat Party cannot survive and thrive in this country. Everyone knows it. Everyone can see it. They're full of hypocrisy. They exempt themselves from the very laws that they insist that we abide by because they know they're bad for us. But they're not going to take that. And that's the admission. Obamacare is so great. Obamacare is so great that nobody in Congress wants to be on the exchanges. Unbelievable, folks. All right, that's all we have time for today. We've hit an hour here. I need to tell you about something else, and I'm going to follow up with one story to conclude. But are you ready to move easily and independently without pain or stiffness holding you back? Do you want to look in the mirror and see plump, hydrated glow instead of more fine lines and wrinkles? Discover Native Path Collagen, made with only type 1 and 3 collagen fibers. These are the two most important types that make up 90% of the collagen in your body. Your cartilage, bones, skin, hair, nails, gut. It's a single ingredient formula, Native Path Collagen. No fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners. There's no heavy metals. So it's pure, it's safe. It's flavorless. It can be added to anything, coffee, smoothies, oatmeal, whatever. And its peptide formula makes it more bioavailable, which means it doesn't clump. And they've got amazing bundle deals. You can get 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. You call them. There's actually somebody who will speak to you on the other end of the phone. You can join their private Facebook community. But visit getnativepath.com/daily clout and start your transformation today. That's getnativepath.com/daily clout. I was thinking about something the other day. This actually isn't related. This is kind of a tangent. But I do want to speak to more and more young people out there on this show, and I hope more and more young people will come to the Drew Allen Show. I'm not such an old man at 38 years old, but I have, since Charlie Kirk died, it hit too close to home. I did an episode on it. It was a tough one to do, but he gave everything, his life, and he did it for faith, and he did it for his beliefs, which of course are the beliefs of effectively the founding fathers, the beliefs that I hold and many of you hold, that make this country great and work. And, I wrote about it, and I've got a book coming out about Charlie, I think in December is when the publisher has agreed that it will be ready. But I really did shed my last fear in speaking publicly about my beliefs and my faith, my belief in Christ, and also my opinions grounded in reality and study, rigorous study, actually. And it's been so freeing. I mean, I've had the podcast for a long time, years, and I'm not like some schmuck. I mean, I am a columnist. You can look me up and read my stuff, and I'm an author, and I've been on TV and radio talking about issues as a pundit. So it's not that I've been totally secretive and closeted, but I've held back from posting things on social media because when I did in 2020, I just still wasn't mature enough, emotionally, I guess, to deal with the hatred that came with it. Friends and even acquaintances I used to be friends with that I hadn't heard from in, a decade came out of the woodwork to express profanity to me and condemn me and attack me and ridicule me. And they're doing it now on Facebook and all that sort of stuff. And it doesn't bother me at all. I really mean that sincerely. It used to bother me. I'm now at a place where it doesn't bother me at all. I welcome it. And I feel a lot of peace, actually. Like, I don't feel angry with the people that attack me anymore. I used to get kind of upset about it. It would rile me up. It doesn't rile me up anymore because I know that I have truth on my side. And a lot of that stems from faith. It stems from my belief in a transcendent power that I answer to. I don't answer to the critics or the, trolls. And one of the things that I've seen already from expressing my views in a more public way, more brazenly, is a lot of people coming out who support me. And why that's important is not just because it feels good, but because it shows that you are giving voice to people in your community who are listening. And the objective ultimately is to get more and more people to get to a place where I am, where Charlie was. Charlie was well ahead of me, still is. I want to get there. I'm working to get there. But it's a freeing experience speaking out. And all you need to do is have confidence in your beliefs, to know that you're right. So you have to reject moral relativism, and you have to understand that there is actually right and wrong. And you also, look, the burden on you, though, if you want to choose this path, is that you have to be prepared for argument. You have to actually study the issues and have arguments prepared. You've got to, if you're going to talk about faith in the Bible, you should study the Bible. It's not enough to just say you believe. You've got to have conviction. That conviction comes from study, and that conviction comes from even questioning your own beliefs. And when you question yourself and then build those arguments, the rug can't be pulled out from under you anymore. And so that's why I'm doing it more and more. And I hope that will encourage other young people to speak out too. And you'll find your own style and way. I mean, it's always evolving for all of us, but I've never felt happier in some ways than stepping out and doing it this way. Because there's a confidence, there's a conviction again that is just such an important thing in your life. So Don't worry about the haters. That's not your audience. You're not reaching out to people that hate you. You're not even trying to necessarily like persuade them. A lot of people prefer the road less traveled. Sorry, not the road less traveled. What I mean to say is most people prefer the path of least resistance. And so when you speak out about your views and they see that other people think like them and are taking the step of, simply accepting the slings and arrows of abuse that come with it, it shows them that they're not alone. And it shows them that, and it does matter that you do this because the left, like their own rallies, they exaggerate the numbers because the objective is to convince you that you're in a minority so that you should just give up. And you're not in a minority. And even if we were in the minority, which we're not, we won the election. Even if we were in the minority, it wouldn't change the way I behave or talk or express myself, because at the end of the day, I'm not driven by what's popular. I'm driven by what's true. Truth is my guiding principle. And so just, take the step. Maybe it doesn't happen overnight, but I promise you that it gets easier. You learn to actually enjoy the comments because you have, again, conviction and confidence. You can read these comments that people post and they make you laugh because they just expose themselves as ignorant. And so I actually have more compassion for those people now. I have, more tranquility in my soul. And I have kids. Having kids changes you too, because you need to fight for them. You can't bow down. You can't be quiet. So that's my ending message for you all. I appreciate you tuning in today. Sincerely. I don't know if I say it enough, but it really means the world. It's really a privilege to have any audience, really. And I have a growing audience. And so I just want to say, God bless you all. You're all in my prayers. This country's in my prayers. And this is Drew Allen, your Millennial Minister of Truth. God bless you all. And until next time. Did everybody out there enjoy your weekend? Did you attend the No Kings protest? Many people pointed out that the No Kings protest was a roaring success because we went to sleep before the protest and there was no king. And the protest succeeded in preventing a king from appearing when we woke up, the next day, Saturday, Sunday, whatever it was. I didn't participate. I was with my family attending birthday parties for my 2.5-year-old. She went to someone else's birthday party. It was such a wonderful weekend. I was out and about, though, in town where I live, and I will say I saw about 12 people, all of them with gray hair, boomers, 1 foot in the grave, actually, many of these people, and they were protesting. They had their signs, No Kings. It was a bust, folks. 7 million people were supposed to show up. Maybe 1 million showed up. Trump won by 77 million votes, and the reason the left does this, and they, people are left it's a talking point they were giving them. 7 million people. That's a huge number. Look at the protest for Trump. I told you already how futile it was, right? I mean, Trump won an election. There's no election tomorrow. He's still president. Nothing's going to change. So it was a stupid protest to begin with, but it was, power to the people. Show our, that we don't support this president. But it was a failure because 7 million people didn't, in fact, show up. And I would remind you, this is what the left does because they depend upon optics. They want perception to be reality. So, for example, if you go back in time, remember the Canadian trucker protesting the COVID mandates over there? That was actually a massive protest. That was a massive protest. And what did the left say? Oh, it's tiny, it's small. They downplayed it. They did the opposite. They told the 7 million people showed up for the No Kings protest on Saturday when it was maybe 1 million. I saw other estimates at 650,000, but whatever, 1 million people, 1.5 million, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't 7 million. Much smaller number, a failure. So they pump that up to try and convince you that it's a big popular movement. And then when you have a real popular movement that is, led and run by people on the right, conservatives, they downplay the numbers because, the only way the left and the authoritarians, the real authoritarians, can actually succeed is by getting you to just stop, you to give up. because they are in disarray. They're a disaster. They are not ascendant. The Democrat Party, in fact, has one foot in the grave, and they know it, and you know it, but they want to convince you that that's not reality, when in fact it is. Welcome to the Drew Allen Show, everybody. This is Drew Allen, your millennial minister of truth. Many things to get into today. I want to talk about some new, the latest Politico hit job. Politico is now, it's always been, but they have clearly been tasked with the objective of trying to create a false moral equivalence between people on the so-called right and people on the left who assassinate Charlie Kirk and try to assassinate President Trump and try to kill other conservatives. They want to create this false equivalence to distract from the reality that the left is, in fact, an existential threat to this country and your freedom and our liberty, and on and on. So before I came on here, I saw this piece from Politico. Paul Ingrassia. He's Donald Trump's nominee to lead the Office of Special Counsel. Well, he had some text exchanges, another group text chat, and he made fun of Martin Luther King Jr. He said that the holidays should be tossed into the seventh circle of hell, and he said, jokingly, that he has a Nazi streak. And this is according to the text chat that Politico released. And so, Ingrassia has a Senate confirmation hearing scheduled on Thursday. And I'm going to make the case and explain to you exactly why I don't care. As a matter of fact, because Politico released this, the Republicans have a double obligation to go ahead and confirm Paul Ingrassia. And I want to explain something to you. So what's happening now? What's blowing my, first off, be careful who your friends are. Because obviously people are trying to work against the Trump administration. This really isn't about Paul Ingrassia, right? You understand this isn't about Paul Ingrassia. This is actually about opposition to Trump. This is about creating a counter narrative to distract from. Look, Charlie Kirk was murdered a month ago. And Democrats obviously want to move on from that. And so this is the tactic. And look, this is coming from Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Saul Alinsky was, the OG, community organizer, right? He was idolized by the likes of Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama. This is a Marxist revolutionary of the left who wrote a book giving them tactics, trying to tell them how to bring about Marxist revolution in America, to overthrow the greatest country in the history of the world and replace it with a hellhole. And Alinsky, one of the tactics is that he enlists the leftist activists to commit themselves to is make the enemy live up to its own rules. So obviously all of this stems from the fact that, the Democrats are very, very hurt by the release of the Jay Jones text messages. Jay Jones being the Democrat who's running for Attorney General in Virginia. Now, Jay Jones didn't say, kind of risque things in a text message. He openly advocated for the murder of his political opponent. He talked about putting bullets in his opponent and his opponent's children. And he talked about how he would piss on their grave, effectively. Saying that is a very different thing from making jokes and text messages. And before some of the holier than thou people out there try and pretend that you've never said anything, basically, I'm just gonna say it. I guess I'll just put words in your mouth for the first time. I don't like to do this, but I'm gonna do it. Not to all of you, but there's some people out there that just don't get it. They want to pretend that they are above and more moral than other people when it comes to these text messages and things like that. If you go through people's X feeds, let me put it this way. Do you ever have thoughts that you wouldn't go out and articulate to people? I'm talking about your thoughts, your private thoughts. Everyone understands that these text messages with groups and things like that, they effectively are an extension of those thoughts in many cases. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. So I don't espouse cursing. I try not to use bad language, coarse language. I don't like it. It's not the end of the world, but I mean, a relative once told me, cursing is the sign of profanity is a sign of a weak mind trying to express itself forcefully. And that's true. I mean, you a lot of times you can use curse words and they, omit the need for certain arguments and things like that. But there are certain people I text with where I will type certain profanity, kind of in a joking manner, kind of in a freeing manner, because I wouldn't actually do that in my public life or even with my friends in person. So there's a way I will text people sometimes that isn't indicative of who I am or what I believe. And of course, there are jokes and things like that too. But really, all of this is unnecessary to even point out because I refuse to bend the knee to the left's Marxist tactic. So now they're getting all these private messages and it's never going to stop. This is it. They're, whether they're leaked or however they obtain these things, they're going to try and hold, every person on the right. And by the way, no one can meet the moral standard that the left is trying to hold the right to. And the point is the left has no moral standards whatsoever. None whatsoever. So you're dealing with an enemy. It's like going to the jungles of Vietnam or going to the Middle East. And you want to fight a war with conventional tactics. And the left, like the Taliban, like the Congos in Vietnam, they understand that they don't have to use those rules of engagement. And so they use them against you. And so from a perspective of saving the country, with a perspective of what the left is comprised of and what they're trying to do tactically, I don't care. I don't care. And objectively, there is no equivalence between private text messages that have jokes or other things, even talking about Martin Luther King Jr., and the public messaging of Democrats that celebrates the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Let me just give you one example. I didn't actually plan to start the show this way, but every time I come on, something, pops up. It's the news. It's always happening. So it's important to me and I want to incorporate it. So here's a protester at the No Kings protest. Listen to this gray-haired lady and the way she speaks publicly on camera. This isn't in a private text. This is public.
Recently, with Charlie Kirk being assassinated,
He's a piece of garbage. Of course we were mean. I am so tired of people saying, oh, but, it's a terrible thing. No, Hitler is dead. I'm glad Hitler's dead.
Something that I've heard in interviewing Republicans is that they're concerned with the health care going to undocumented immigrants. What would you say about that?
I don't know that it's true. Everybody deserves health care, and we can certainly afford it in this country. So again, they're just, they're pointing to things and saying it's our fault, we're too liberal.
Not many brain cells in that individual, but the main thing to point out is what she starts with. I'm glad Charlie Kirk's dead. I'm glad Hitler is dead. So there is a big difference in celebrating someone's death, endorsing their murder and assassination as a good thing in this country, and somebody in a private text message, using a racist remark or something like that with, friends or a group. So, again, I'm standing firm on this. Now, look, I would absolutely, and I say this unequivocally, I would draw a line if these text messages or anything that, the left could dig up from someone on the right, if they spoke about assassinating, killing, harming the children or the family of anybody on the right, no matter how vile I think they are, then I would absolutely condemn it in the strongest terms. But that's not what's happening here. And so what they want to do is not have a conversation about the left's political violence problem and instead focus on private text messages of Republicans that they can pull out of context or whatever else. So I'm not going to do it. And by the way, Martin Luther King Jr., this is one of those things they attacked Charlie Kirk on. I do believe that MLK Jr. Had a positive impact on this country in many ways. Now, the problem is this is like the Civil Rights Act. Now, the Republicans, let's not get into revisionist history here. The Republicans tried to pass civil rights legislation for 20 plus years, and the Democrats always stopped it. The Republicans tried, for example, to make it illegal to, hang blacks by their necks, aka lynching. And the Democrats opposed even that legislation. But the Democrats got a little savvier. And by the time LBJ became president, LBJ famously said, I'll have those N-words voting Democrat for the next X amount of years, 100 years or whatever it was. And it required, the Democrats had a supermajority in the Congress when LBJ tried to pass civil rights legislation, the first act of 1964. And he couldn't pass it even with a supermajority. That means the Democrats didn't require a single Republican vote to pass civil rights legislation. They had all the votes they needed. But Republicans came to the rescue and ensured that it passed. And so this myth of the switch, the myth of the big switch, where Democrats, became the, party of anti-racism, and the Republicans suddenly adopted the Democrats' posture for their entire history and became the party of anti-black racists, it never happened. It never happened. And in fact, the civil rights legislation gave way to affirmative action. And this is the point Charlie Kirk often made, that went too far. Went too far. It actually assailed the highest ideals of America by incorporating in our laws up until today that the opposite of what Martin Luther King Jr. preached, by the way, which was that, a man shouldn't be judged by the color of his skin, but by his character. And of course, affirmative action is the opposite of that. It's very harmful, and it creates victims by default. So Martin Luther King Jr., obviously he is celebrated as a hero. Now, he's not exactly George Floyd, obviously. But, Martin Luther King Jr., we're all sinners, but Martin Luther King Jr., he had countless extramarital affairs. His closest associates admitted it, and he plagiarized portions of his doctoral dissertation, and that's the record. That's the record. So that's who Martin Luther King Jr. does. Now, does that take away from what he did or what he's remembered for? You can decide that if you want. I've told you, I think that his ultimate message, the one he's most famous for, I think is a net positive for America. But you can have a conversation about Martin Luther King Jr.'s private life and who he was. So if the left wants to sit here and attack, Paul Ingrassia for criticism of MLK Jr. based on the very personal character flaws that I'm talking about, well, Paul Ingrassia is perfectly capable of doing good as well in his position, despite some of his personal character flaws. You see how this works? Good. Good. I just want to. Well, I don't think we need to talk about the No Kings protest much anymore. I mean, it was stupid. It didn't have a great showing. It was mostly old people, as I told you. And, the main takeaway from that is how the left wants to insist on this narrative that it was such a big deal. That it's so, because, they want you to believe at this critical moment that Trump is now unpopular, because they want you to stop supporting Trump. They want you, they're looking at midterms, they're looking at things like that. They need to stop Trump. I do want to play another clip from the No Kings protest. So while we're focused on Paul Ingrassia, this guy can't be confirmed or whatever else, listen to the Party of Tolerance over the weekend.
You got to grab a gun. We got to turn around the guns on this fascist system. These ICE agents got to get shot and wiped out. The state machinery that's a full.
Sounds like a candidate for deportation to me. I detect an accent. Check his papers. But you hear that guy, right? He calls for people to pick up their guns and turn them on ice. That is a call for violence. This guy should be arrested. If he is a naturalized citizen, he should be denaturalized and deported. We can't tolerate that in this country. But this is the party. So we're being told all of these, all this BS, all this gaslighting about the right and what we are and whatever else. And meanwhile, this is happening at protests. And by the way, what that guy just did there is worse than 99% of the J6 protesters who committed misdemeanor offenses, walking peacefully through the open doors of the building, Capitol building. This guy's calling for the murder of ICE in public. I want to play this clip of CNN because I want to reinforce for you and help you understand that everything the Democrats are doing right now, right? All of their desperate efforts to fight back because they can't accept the election results, they're in vain. The Democrat Party is historically unpopular. Democrats have admitted it. They know it. That's why they're reducing themselves to these pathetic tactics and text message leaks and so on and so forth. But the shutdown is not a winning issue for the Democrat Party. It's not. Their opposition to, ICE raids and deportations are not the popular opinion. A majority of Americans support that too. And listen to this from CNN.
About Donald Trump shutdowns, net approval rating, we're talking 20 days into it. In 2018/2019, Donald Trump's net approval rating was already falling. The shutdown was eating into his popular support. It was down 3 points already at this particular point and would fall considerably more. It was very much on the decline. You come over to this side of the screen, this shutdown hasn't eaten into Donald Trump's support at all. His net approval rating is actually up a point in terms of his popular support. So the bottom line is this. The first shutdown during Trump's first term, 2018-2019, was hurting Donald Trump. This one is not hurting him at all. There's no real reason Donald Trump might say, at least when it comes to popular support, I want to get out of this shutdown.
What about the question of blame?
Yeah, okay. What about the question of blame? Okay, you see Donald Trump's net approval rating was down 2018 to 2019. You talk about 2025 as net approval rating is up. It comes down to the blame game, a game I loved to play when I was younger. Blame Trump for the shutdown a great deal. In 2018/2019, 61%, more than 3 in 5 Americans, blame Trump a great deal for that particular shutdown.
Wow. So 61% blame Trump for the shutdown back in 2018-19, and now 48%. So less than half of the population in the country blames Trump. And that's because the American population is done with the Democrat games. We have wised up. People have gotten themselves educated and informed. They are mostly off of the Democrat plantation right now and can think for themselves. And that's what I always encourage you to do on this show. This show is about encouraging you and inspiring you to do your research, to think critically for yourselves. Do not be told what to believe by anyone else. And it's obvious that this is a Democrat Party shutdown. The Democrat Party continues to vote against Republican efforts to open the country back up, to open up, the government, not the country. We're still thriving here in the private sector, but the government is shut down. And, my heart is, I do feel for some of these government employees, people in the military in particular. I mean, they got a paycheck this last week or whenever it was, because Hegseth and others found the money and were able to move it around to pay people, but that's not going to continue. So, paychecks are going to be missed soon. Now, the Republicans do not have a majority, a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. So anyone with a basic civics education knows that the Republicans need the Democrats to vote to open the government. And the Democrats refused to do it. And the Republicans didn't even try and do anything tricky. This continuing resolution was clean. It was a clean bill, one that Democrats have supported, I think, 12 or 13 times over the past number of years. So it's never been a problem. But now, because they have Trump derangement syndrome, they insist on opposing Trump. I mean, the minority party is demanding a bunch of things in this bill, and that's not how it works. And the Republicans who have a majority, not filibuster proof, but who have a majority, who have a clear mandate from the American people, they didn't even try and push through any of their quote unquote, our quote unquote goodies in this continuing resolution. And so anybody with a brain understands that this is a Democrat shutdown because the Republicans keep holding votes to open the government and the Democrats keep voting to keep it closed. So it's not working anymore. I do want to talk about the left's reaction to this Donald Trump's expansion of the White House, this ballroom edition in just a moment. But first, ask yourself, what if the next big crash is already in motion and almost no one sees it coming? Every major economic collapse since 1929 was preceded by the same 7 warning signals. And right now, all 7 are flashing red at the same time. These aren't headlines. They're deep market indicators that Wall Street prefers you never hear about. And that's why our friends at American Alternative Assets created the Bellwether Signal, a free report that reveals what these signals mean and how smart Americans are protecting their savings with gold and silver before it's too late. You can download your free copy right now at cloutgold.com, or you can call them at 855-803-GOLD. 855-803-GOLD. Again, that's cloutgold.com or 855-803-4653. Get the facts. Protect your future. Don't wait for the headlines to catch up. What are your feelings out there about Mamdani? You think Mamdani is going to be the mayor of New York City? It's looking like it. I was on a radio show this morning just before I came on my own show, The Drew Allen Show. And we were talking about Mamdani. They asked me about Mamdani. And, you know, there's news that, Mamdani is kind of Obama 2.0, except he's like a legit Muslim. But there's a terror-linked Brooklyn imam. And he just recently was seen palling around with the socialist New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani. And this imam once urged jihad on the Big Apple. His name is Imam Siraj Wahhaj, one of the nation's foremost Muslim leaders. And in the early 2000s, he delivered a sermon telling followers to participate in gun-free jihad and march through the city of New York. I pray one day, he said, Allah will bless us to raise an army. And I'm serious about this, he said during the sermon. We were very close recently. We had made intention to raise an army of 10,000 men in New York City. He tells Muslim men further, go fight in the way of Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Added the Imam, glory be to Allah. 800,000 Muslims in New York City, he said. Can you imagine if 800,000 Muslims decide to march every day? Now there's more, he says. But this man has no place in America. He sides with the terrorists. He views himself as an insurrectionist. And this is one of Mamdani's buddies. And my friends on the Vic Porcelli radio show are asking me, like, how many New Yorkers do you think know about this because of the media? And I said, let me ask you another question that's scarier. How many New Yorkers do you think would care? And that's the question. And so, you know, the even Republican that saw the New York Post editorial board was calling for Sliwa, no, he's not an imam, but Curtis Sliwa, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's running as a Republican candidate in New York City. They're calling on him to get out of the race because then it would be between Andrew Cuomo and Mamdani. And I guess they're hoping that, Cuomo, who murdered a bunch of, old people in nursing homes by sending COVID-infected patients in there, now suddenly he is desired in New York City. Folks, I can't tell you just how poisonous the Democrat Party ideology is. If you can just look at these markers and see how rapidly this poison has infected and spread like a cancer in this country. I'm not even talking about going back to 2016. I mean, it's getting more and more rapid. 2016 was a big moment. That's when Barack Hussein Obama, America's first Muslim president, that's when he gave a green light for an actual coup to undermine the will of the American people. That's when he told the intelligence community with the drafting of the ICA with John Brennan, he commanded them to label Donald Trump, Putin's puppet, after he was elected, but before he was inaugurated, so that they could then investigate him and paint him as such when they knew there was no evidence to support it. And, by 2020, after 4 years of, Trump as Hitler and the COVID scam and all that sort of stuff, that's when Democrats began to peel off and cancel Republicans from their lives. It happened to me. It happened to many people I talked to. That was a big shift, a big scary moment in American history where people that you were friends with in the past who overlooked political differences then could no longer do it. They could no longer live and tolerate you as a friend because you supported Trump. And now we get to this point where Mamdani, who is an avowed, self-declared socialist, who is a friend of an imam who called for jihad in New York City in the early 2000s. This is a friend of terrorists, radical Islamist terrorists. Mamdani is friends with a radical Islamist terrorist in New York City, which experienced the greatest domestic act of terrorism in our history on 9/11. And this guy is poised to become the mayor of New York City. Now, one of the things I pointed out on numerous occasions, even just hoping I could get, just talk to a liberal out there, somebody in New York City who would actually consider supporting Mamdani. It's this. Mamdani is in his early 30s. I think that's it. That's the oldest he is. He's in his early 30s. And he's never had a legitimate job in his life. He's never run anything. He's never built anything. He's just a radical ideologue. He's a socialist. New York City, of course, is the biggest city in America. It's one of the most important cities in the world. You would not hire Mamdani to be CEO of any company in America because he doesn't have the experience or the acumen. He doesn't have the resume. And I just scratch my head and I think, okay, New York City is the most important city in the world. If I lived in New York City, obviously the policies that are enacted by these mayors are very important to my personal life and my future. Why would I vote for someone who has no experience running anything to run the biggest city in America? How does he have qualifications to do that? And of course, politics is the one sphere where that doesn't matter. But you're seeing why Trump is successful in contrast to Barack Obama, who was successful in another way, successful at destroying the country, because Barack Hussein Obama surrounded himself by radical ideologues that agreed with him. And they carried out the marching orders. But Donald Trump has that experience. He has run companies. Oh, he's been bankrupt, blah, blah, blah. He's a multi-billionaire. He's tried, he's succeeded, he's failed, and he's succeeded wildly, which is the story of all great American entrepreneurs. And so you're seeing that competency now in the government. Now, what we saw last time with Donald Trump was a shortcoming, right? Because working in the private sector is radically different from working in the government. And Donald Trump, having no political experience in the past, did not have people that he could trust, that he'd worked with around him to bring into the White House. And so the last time we had an issue because he didn't have government people around him that were good people. And this time, he has surrounded himself with very, very capable cabinet selections and so on and so forth. Now, nobody's perfect. That's not what I ever try to argue on this case. I mean, in this case, with anything, but that's the point. But anyway, so Mamdani, he campaigned on Friday with this imam. And by the way, he's a notorious gay-hating imam. He's an unindicted co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and has been linked to other terrorist activities in the United States. Now, so can I just reiterate something? So how did I start this show? I talked about this Politico hit job, right? First, Politico last week comes out with text messages of leaders of the young Republicans, most of them in their 20s. And they had colorful exchanges and said things that you wouldn't want aired out in public, but they didn't call for anybody to be killed. They had conversations that maybe many of you wouldn't have, but they're not completely, they're not as outrageous as Politico wants you to think because you're talking about young kids. So anyway, I don't need to sit here. It's not about defending. I don't talk like that in text messages. But my point is, you need to have perspective and you need to understand what is at stake. So you've got Democrats who want to use this Marxist Saul Alinsky tactic, make the enemy live up to its own rules. So you've got Paul Ingrassia, who is supposed to be, confirmed in the Senate, or at least the hearing is supposed to happen on Thursday for the Office of Special Counsel. And Politico obtained leaked text messages from Paul Ingrassia that really don't say anything horrendous at all. This guy, okay? And now you've got Mamdani, who on Friday, who was actually seen smiling and palling around with a radical imam, a Muslim co-conspirator in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, who's anti-gay. And I'm supposed to be upset about Paul Ingrassia and focus my attention on Paul Ingrassia, not Mamdani, who is poised to become the mayor of New York City and bring about unprecedented carnage on the streets. Do you understand how your brain must deal with these two things and understand what the tactics here are by the left? So I'm supposed to sit here and condemn Paul Ingrassia. I'm supposed to sit here and buy the left's false narrative that Republicans are racist, Republicans are bigots, Republicans are horrible people, when the Democrats are out there in No Kings protests calling for people to pick up guns and kill ICE agents, when other gray-haired blue hairs, as they're called in history, the blue hairs who have gray hair, are out there celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder, saying, it's ridiculous that we should be upset. I'm glad Hitler's dead, in reference to Charlie Kirk. And you got Mamdani with an anti-gay a Muslim imam who's linked to terrorist activity in America. But Politico releases the text messages of Paul Ingrassia, and I'm supposed to be concerned about that. Go screw yourself. Only somebody with no brain cells left to run together would buy that crap from Politico, would bend the knee because a bunch of morons on the left demand that you condemn all these things as if they have any moral ground to stand on whatsoever. They have no moral ground to stand on. The left does not have they don't stand on moral ground. They're on, standing on a graveyard of corruption, of treason, of amorality. The party of transgenderism that wants your 8-year-old to be indoctrinated to cut off his penis or have a double mastectomy. That party can just stay silent. I care nothing about what the left says. What they say, what Politico writes, what they pump through the echo chamber on social media has zero effect on me whatsoever. I base none of my decisions, none of my opinions on what the left is saying. Charlie Kirk murderers. Donald Trump assassins. Pound sand. Pound sand. Okay, I do want to talk about the White House. This will be a fun segment. I want to give you some history. I love history. I want to talk about the history of the White House, and I'm going to do that in just a minute so we can be uninterrupted for the rest of the show. But first, are you ready to move easily and independently without pain or stiffness holding you back? Do you look in the mirror and see a plump, hydrated glow instead of more fine lines and wrinkles? Discover Native Path Collagen. Made with only type 1 and 3 collagen fibers, the two most important types that make up 90% of the collagen in your body. Collagen, of course, is found in your bones, in your cartilage, in your skin, your hair, your nails. It's found in your gut. And types 1 and 3 provide maximum benefits without the need for unnecessary fillers. So Native Path Collagen, it's a single ingredient formula. You've heard me talk about this on the show many times. It doesn't have fillers, doesn't have additives, artificial sweeteners. It's third-party tested for heavy metals, ensuring purity and safety. It's completely flavorless. It has a peptide formula, which makes it more bioavailable. That means it just doesn't clump. So you can put it in your oatmeal, your coffee, your smoothies. It's flavorless, as I said. It doesn't clump. And it's just, the company's booming. 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews. And you can visit getnativepath.com/dailyclout. Again, that's getnativepath.com/dailyclout and start your transformation today. So look, I've got some, if you're watching on the live Rumble show or Rumble later, I've got some images I want to show you of the White House. So that'll be kind of entertaining. If you're just listening, I'll describe them to you. And, the Get Native Path reminding me of something. If you haven't, and you're willing to, I would appreciate it. Take the time to, look, every show, it's beneficial if you like the episode, or certainly if you listen on Spotify or Apple, to go on and give it a 5-star review. So I never asked for that. I forget to, but I have been intending to. So, if you like the show today, I would appreciate it if you would take the time to do that. All right, so let's talk about the White House history, because have you seen the reactions from the left? So firstly, the left, as usual, they don't have two brain cells to rub together. It's all groupthink. So everything I've seen on social media is a picture of the demolition right now that is necessary, right, to add on and have construction. And they're saying that, this is an image of what Trump's doing to America. Now, they, of course, are acting like there's no historic precedent for this. It's so amazing to me. So what Donald Trump is doing is he's adding a larger space onto the White House. And it's going to be a ballroom that's intended to host important state functions, state guests, people from other countries, world leaders. And right now it's a very small space, and they actually aren't even able to host everyone in there. They have to put it up under a tent adjacent to the White House. So it's 2025, and the needs have outgrown the space available. And the White House, people get, the White House is our house. Yeah, it is our house. It is our house. But, we're not the real estate agents, and, it's the president and the administration that's in there that gets to make some of these adjustments, and they're not new at all. So this is just another example of Trump derangement syndrome, the left's outrage because they just have to be mad about something all the time, everything. So, first off, the White House is not Versailles. The White House is not some museum. The White House, thank God, is a living chronicle of America, because we still continue to be the longest running democracy in the world, uninterrupted. And so it's not a relic to be preserved. It is a living place that is occupied and used by the President of the United States and his administration. And so, of course, it must, be altered over the years. So, so this is great. So this is the, and then I'll get into Karine Jean-Pierre in just a minute because that's amazing. So here's actually the earliest image of the White House. This is from 1846. So this is actually what you're looking at is the second White House. Now it's very similar to the one that we're familiar with on the outside, at least, but that's from 1846. Now, George Washington started building the White House in the early 1790s, 1792, and it was not completed until 1800. And then, the first White House was burned to the ground by the British by way of Canada in 1814. So the first White House was burnt to the ground, had to be rebuilt. Theodore Roosevelt, added the West Wing as we know it today. Harry Truman gutted the entire White House because it was falling apart, amongst other reasons, and rebuilt it. I want to give you a picture of this. So the left is out there trying to use a picture of Donald Trump and some demolition happening to build a better, improved space, ballroom at the White House. Here's an image of the inside of the interior of the White House under President Truman. Totally gutted. Totally gutted. So are they outraged about Donald Truman and what he did to the White House too? No. Now, I mean, the White House looked a disaster back in the 1920s because, and after, if you think about it, every administration comes in and changes are made. And so you're living through different architectural eras as well. So you have the Victorian era, for example, and you have these bizarre things. And at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know what I'm trying to use as an analogy, but some house that doesn't have any, it's an incoherent space. But anyway, so, you've got Teddy Roosevelt who added the West Wing that got the offices out of the main residence. You had President Taft. He created the Oval Office, by the way. FDR added a press briefing room. He added a bunker below the White House as well because it was World War II. You have the Truman balcony, which is so synonymous now with the White House, where everyone stands and waves and whatever else. That was added. And it was controversial at the time that he was building it. Obama added tennis and basketball courts. Ooh. So anyway, it really is infuriating to me the way the left just shows its inability to think critically. Everything Trump does has to be, denounced. By the way, here's an image from No Kings, I believe, too. The Denver Communists had a table set up. It says Charlie Kirk had it coming. Will Democrats condemn this? Will Mamdani condemn it? I demand that Democrats condemn everything that I show them about their own ilk. Okay. So Karine Jean-Pierre, Karine Jean-Pierre is really railing against the Democrat Party, but it's not for what you'd think. Karine Jean-Pierre is actually upset. She calls herself an independent. She's upset because of how Democrats treated Biden. Can you believe it? That's what she's upset about. And this is, by the way, Democrats, this is your problem. This is one of many problems, but this is the primary reason that you have one foot in the grave as a party right now. It's because you doubled down on your lies. You refuse to ever acknowledge any mistake you've ever made. You refuse to ever tell the truth or reverse course, even when it's undeniable and unignorable that you've been lying to the American people. You show no ability to acknowledge error and fault. Here's a first clip.
And right now, in this moment, there's an existential threat. Our democracy is hanging by a thread. Some people would say we're already an authoritarian regime. And I need to see teeth. I need to see fire. And not just me. Many people are worried and concerned.
She needs to see teeth. I think you showed your teeth last month on the 10th when one of your indoctrinated leftists put a bullet in Charlie Kirk's neck. Is that the kind of teeth you're talking about, Karine? Or how about the sniper's nest that the Secret Service just discovered near Mar-a-Lago that was set up to assassinate Trump again for the third attempt? Here's another one of Karine Jean-Pierre.
He was saying, because I too thought that. And you said, people said, why didn't members of his inner circle speak up about what many believe was the apparent decline of Joe Biden? You said, you're a member of the inner circle and you never saw the decline. And after that, I wrote, how? Yeah. You even write, Karine, that you were on the plane with him going to the debate and you didn't see anything.
Well, when we were on the Air Force One going to the debate, you got to remember his campaign people were on the team, his family was on the team. I actually was one of those rare trips that I didn't really see him until after the debate, even though I was on the plane. So really, I want everybody to know that I take this question.
I'm just going to stop there for a second. So listen to the way these professional liars lie. So she doubles down. She will double down and say that there was no issue. She didn't ever notice any problems with Joe Biden's mental acuity. So she continues to say that. And yet when asked about the time on the plane before the debate, in which other people are saying they noticed it, she said, well, I wasn't on the plane. So which is it? So are you acknowledging now that there was a problem with his mental acuity and you just didn't see it on the plane ride? But that was the only occasion where it could have been seen because you also say you were around him all the time. You are one of his close advisors. You are one of the people in his inner circle, and you never saw a problem with his brain. And yet when asked about the plane trip to the debate where his whole campaign blew up, well, I wasn't there. I didn't see that episode. These people think that if you support these people, they think you are retarded. That's what they think. That's what they think. So anyway, that's Karine Jean-Pierre. She's out there trying to sell her new book, hawking her new book. She says in the book, Biden seemed to be totally at peace with his decision, but I was stunned. My feelings a blur. I was angry and sad. I was enraged and heartbroken that this man had given more than 50 years of his life to serving the American people. And in the end, he'd been treated poorly by members of his own party. It was horrible, Jean-Pierre wrote. 50 years of his life serving the American people. No, 50 years of his life serving himself and his family through corruption. That's what he did. I just got to decide here. We got a few minutes left here to talk. I think I've got to address the ceasefire in between Hamas and Israel. So here's an exchange. So the ceasefire, it's holding as of now, but Hamas has already violated it and broken it. But I want you to hear Donald Trump addressing what's going on.
Mr. President, you just alluded to the violence in the Middle East. What steps is the administration taking to maintain the ceasefire?
Well, a lot of steps, and right now it's in the hands of others. You know, we have 59 countries that agreed to the deal. We have a peace in the Middle East for the first time ever. We made a deal with Hamas that, you know, they're going to be very good, they're going to behave, they're going to be nice, and if they're not, we're going to go and we're going to eradicate them if we have to. They'll be eradicated, and they know that. So they went in, and I don't believe it was the leadership, but they had some rebellion in there among themselves, and they killed.
So what's about to happen is that the people who've been radicalized by the anti-Semitic wing of the United States media, including podcast hosts like Candace Owens, are about to see the truth exposed. Now, again, I will say, I think it's perfectly reasonable to be upset by the death toll in Gaza. I think it's totally appropriate for people to offer sharp criticism of Israel even in the destruction that took place in the wake of it. But again, Israel did not start it. I want to tell you what Hamas has been up to. And this is the thing, you know, when you understand the history and what's really going on around there, the radical anti-Israel groups, they fundamentally depend upon their supporters to adopt the belief that Israel is somehow worse than radical jihadists and terrorists like Hamas. And so if you maintain rationality and you maintain free thought and you keep your wits about you, when you consider that you're comparing Israel to Hamas, Israel can never be worse than Hamas. That's just the reality. Their actions pale in comparison to those of their terrorist neighbors throughout history. And again, it is Hamas and their Islamic neighbors that for decades and decades since their creation have called for, well, from the river to the sea, they have actively called for the genocide of Jews in Israel. And so to somehow try and create, again, a equivalence between Israel and that can't be done, because it depends upon claiming that Hamas is morally superior to Israel. But, days after the Gaza ceasefire was set up, Hamas made it clear they had no intention of disarming or giving up power. And they didn't return the bodies of all the hostages it had murdered. That was the first thing it violated. That was a key piece of the peace plan. That was actually the very first step. They didn't do it. Less than a week after the release of the last living hostages, Hamas fighters outside Rafah, they fired on Israeli soldiers across the Yellow Line, which marks the portion of Gaza under military control. They killed 2 people. And Israel responded by targeting Hamas tunnel systems and briefly closing border crossings into Gaza. What's amazing about this to me is that the pro-Palestine crowd, right? And they're showing their true colors to me right now, because they're actually cheering the end of this ceasefire because they don't want peace. That's not their objective. They actually want this to continue. They want Israel to be destroyed, both in the realm of perception and physically. So in the next phase of the peace plan, Hamas's combatants, they're supposed to lay down their arms, right? They're supposed to exit Gaza, and that isn't happening and hasn't happened and probably won't happen. We had images of Hamas terrorists publicly executing local Palestinian collaborators, and they put that out on purpose because the brutal Islamists, they staged that savagery. They wanted people to see it inside as well as outside Gaza to know they mean business. Anyone who accepted food aid outside of Hamas-approved channels counts as a collaborator. So if you don't get your food from Hamas, they can kill you, and they will kill you. Hamas reopened detention and interrogation facilities at Al-Shifa and other Gaza hospitals. Once again, using the hospitals as cover. So, maybe it's not black and white for many people, but it's certainly not black and white in the sense that Israel's the bad guys and Hamas is the good guys. I can tell you that right now. And so if you're going to be critical of Israel, you better be critical of Hamas as well. But you're going to see the true colors and why this peace can never happen, because Hamas runs Gaza, runs quote unquote Palestine. And by the way, where is Macron? Where are these other world leaders who are calling for the creation of a Palestinian state after this? Hamas refuses to leave. You cannot have a Palestinian state, and I oppose one, period, because I am a realist. But you certainly can't have a Palestinian state that is run by Hamas. That's the problem. And Hamas is unwilling to give up power. So, it is Israeli hatred in the end. And they're like I said, there are criticisms you can make of Israel. When you're talking about this issue right here, you are absolutely, I'm sorry, you're fundamentally wrong. And you've been lied to and you've been misled if your belief is Israel are the bad guys here and Hamas and the Palestinians, they're the victims. It's just not true. Just not true. I had one more thing I wanted to finish on, I think. I'm trying to find it here. Just to close out, Trump was asked by a reporter too about Ukraine. And I just want to play this clip and then comment on it real quick.
You support Senator Lindsey Graham's bill to declare Russia a terrorist state. And you have within your power, you're the most powerful man on earth. Why don't you just enable Ukraine to finish this war tomorrow?
Well, if you knew anything about what you were talking about, you'd be able. You do. I don't think you do. Really, I don't think you do because it's a little more complicated.
Yeah. So why don't you just end the Ukraine, Russia war? I don't have time to get into it fully right now. We'll talk about it again. I have talked about it a lot on previous episodes, especially when it was hot under the Biden administration. But Ukraine can't win in a war against Russia. I don't want to be involved in Ukraine. I don't care about Ukraine in the sense that, it's like, Texas or some other U.S. state. Peace needs to be achieved there. And we are not going to fight the war for the Ukrainians. We're not going to put boots on the ground. Now, this is what happens throughout history. You're a weaker nation. Now, there are other, really the West is at fault for what happened here, to be honest, because we have intervened time and time again over the years to force Ukraine to completely abandon Moscow. You have to understand a history of Ukraine, a history of their relationship with the Soviet Union in the past, how many Ukrainians are sympathetic to Moscow and Russia, and they are neighbors. And so we've meddled there for too long. Now, what Russia did is absolutely wrong, but I'm also a realist. So what Russia wants is the Donbass region in the eastern portion of Ukraine. They've long wanted that. Right now, they have about 80% of the territory. And Zelensky refuses. He has no bargaining chips except for us helping him. But he refuses to give up any land to Russia. And that's a non-starter. That's a non-starter. He's going to have to concede land to Russia. Sorry, you're Ukraine. You're weak. Russia's stronger. So peace is the objective, and concessions will have to be made. And some land will have to be conceded. And Zelensky needs to understand that. We're not going to sit here and fund you forever. We're not going to fund you anymore. We're certainly not going to put troops on the ground and fight Russia and go to war with Russia over the Donbass region. So we're willing to make this as painless as possible. We have mineral rights there now. We have a reason to be involved in Ukraine that should strike fear in the hearts of your enemies a little bit now because we have skin in the game. But, that's just not how negotiations work. That's not how the real world works. So anyway, and that's why Trump is different than other people, because he understands deals. He understands real world. All right, this is Drew Allen. Thank you for being with me today. God bless you all. And until next time.
We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.